Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So, we did get some new information over the weekend about a highly talented Xbox game studio, as it looks like that they have various projects in development. Now, this is exciting because this is one of their more creative studios, or for that matter, I think it's just one of the most creative studios in the industry right now. And this just adds to the growing lineup for Xbox in general. This is something that we are starting to notice, is that they have quite a bit of games in the pipeline. So we're going to go over all of that today. Then also, a highly anticipated game that fans have been looking forward to for years now is finally heading over to PC. But there is a big asterisk around this game because there is quite a bit of controversy surrounding this game. So stay tuned for all of that, as we will go over that later in the video. To get things started off today, though, we are going to be talking about a franchise that might be returning here soon, and that would be Klonoa. Now, Klonoa is one of those beloved mascots released for the original PlayStation. It eventually went over to the PlayStation 2, places like the Game Boy Advance. And while Klonoa wasn't necessarily as popular as some of the other mascots that released during this time, such as Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, of course you had Mario, Banjo-Kazooie, and so on and so forth, but Klonoa did have a pretty dedicated fan base, though unfortunately we just haven't seen this game for a while. But however, that does appear to be changing now. A series of discoveries for this game has popped up online over the last couple years. Back in 2019, there was a lot of talk about Klonoa returning, as some different trademarks popped up over in Japan, and that has continued throughout 2021, as several trademarks have continued to pop up that seems to be referencing an encore version of Klonoa. They do seem to be referencing two different games here, and that has kind of continued on even today, with a new trademark popping up online, this time over in the UK for a game called Klonoa Fantasy Reverie Series. So once again here, with just evidence mounting up, it does appear that Klonoa as a series will be returning with a couple of different remasters. Now, when this will release kind of remains to be seen, but with just trademark after trademark popping up online, this does appear to be happening, and I do view this as an overall good thing. We have been seeing a lot of these mascot platformers return here in recent years with remakes and remasters such as Crash Bandicoot. We saw that happen with Spyro, so why not capitalize on that and do the same thing here with Klonoa? And hey, if it does well enough, maybe we can see even more games within this franchise heading into the future. Now, we do also have some exciting news for PlayStation fans that like Gran Turismo. Of course, we do have Gran Turismo 7 releasing next year, and it sounds like this game is going to have a lot of content right out of the gate. See, Gran Turismo Sport released back in 2017, and it was kind of an unorthodox Gran Turismo release just in general, with it focusing a little bit more on online play. And with that, a lot of the content that released into that game was post-release. Now, when GT Sport originally launched in 2017, it had 168 cars at launch and then 29 tracks. Since then, that has majorly increased to 324 cars total and 82 tracks. But interestingly enough, here with GT7, it does appear that this game will launch with more cars and more tracks than that right out of the gate. This is thanks to a Japanese pamphlet that's being shared over on Twitter, and it does show that GT7 right out of the gate will have over 420 cars and 90 plus racetracks. So this is a significant increase compared to GT Sport's original launch. And again, even with GT Sport increasing throughout the years, it still eclipses that here in GT7. That is certainly great news for Gran Turismo fans, and just once again, it does seem like Gran Turismo is getting back to its roots. And it also does sound like that they're trying to do some interesting things over in the PlayStation 5 with that DualSense controller. They did go into detail about trying to recreate the feel of the car brakes with the DualSense controller, and had this to say. For example, when brakes are effective to a certain point and they lock up, the resistance on the trigger is canceled. So I do think that Gran Turismo 7 is going to be one of those showcases for the DualSense controller, as they can do some really interesting things with that can just add an extra layer of immersion to that already great gameplay. But yeah, if you've been looking forward to a new Gran Turismo game, it is sounding like Gran Turismo 7 is going to be a good one right out of the gate. Barring any kind of delays, this one is set to release on March 4th of 2022, so it's right around the corner. Let's go and talk about Xbox, though, as we did just get an update from Double Fine, one of their newly acquired studios. Of course, they released the brilliant Psychonauts 2 earlier this year, and seriously, if you all have not played that game, definitely do so. It is easily one of the best games that has released in 2021, or for that matter, just the last couple years in general. It is absolutely fantastic. But with just how good that game was, I know there's a lot of curiosity about what they're doing next. And it does sound like that they have a lot planned as they posted this. See ya 2021. Psychonauts 2 has essentially wrapped up as a project, although there will be tweaks and fixes as we move forward. The studio is already splitting up into various teams and starting different projects that we think you'll enjoy. We like experimentation here at Double Fine. Every game is a chance to explore new ideas, new visual styles or gameplay, emotions, and more. Psychonauts 2 was a chance to revisit and reimagine the classic that launched our studio into the future. It was a long process, but we like to think the payoff was pretty great. We stuck the landing, and boy did they ever. That landing was absolutely fantastic, but as you can see from this post here, they are going to be working on multiple projects going forward. Now, this isn't necessarily new for them to work on multiple projects at once. We have seen Double Fine do this several times in the past, but here with Microsoft's backing, it just seems like they're really going to be able to tap into that creativity and really experiment. And this is why this is just such a perfect marriage with Xbox and Double Fine getting together. Xbox is really just going to be able to unlock that potential within Double Fine, as they now are just going to be able to completely let their creative side loose. Tim Schafer in the past has mentioned that they have a lot of ideas that they just have not been able to fully realize, but that's where Xbox comes in, though, because now that Microsoft is backing them, everything has changed for Double Fine going forward. They can now bring these ideas that they've had for years to life. And with their just insane amount of creativity and that extra budget and the resources that Microsoft can afford them, it will be really interesting to see what they come up with next. I actually do genuinely believe that Xbox and Double Fine are the perfect pairing. And the reason I say that is because what Xbox wants and what Double Fine wants just kind of leans into one another. Double Fine as a studio can be explained as quirky and maybe even a little niche. But with Xbox Game Pass, that suddenly just puts so many more eyes on Double Fine as a studio. And another thing that Double Fine has kind of talked about in the past is the fact that this marriage with Xbox just frees them up so much. In the past, Tim Schafer would focus a lot of his time on pitching his games to different studios, and it would keep him away from development. But now that he has Xbox on his side, he no longer has to do that, and he can really primarily focus on his games, and that is going to make for even higher quality games. And, you know, coming from Double Fine, which is, I mean, they're really a legendary studio within the industry, I think that they could really produce some special content throughout this generation. I mean, we already saw that with Psychonauts 2, and yeah, I think now more than ever, there's a lot of fans anxiously awaiting to see what they do next. This is something that we are starting to see a little bit more of with Xbox Game Studios, though. It does seem like a lot of their studios are working on multiple games at once. I mean, this includes Ninja Theory, which is working on Project Mara. They're working on Hellblade 2. This includes Obsidian Entertainment. They're working on The Outer Worlds 2. They're working on Avowed. They have a smaller game that apparently is releasing next year by Josh Sawyer. Then you have Playground Games, which is working on Fable, and of course, they just released Forza Horizon 5. You have Arcane, which is working on Redfall. They just released Deathloop. And yeah, I mean, a lot of their studios are working on multiple games, and it just seems like Xbox has a ton of content in development right now. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to say Xbox has no games this generation, and it really is just amazing to see how much they have turned things around from the Xbox One over to the Xbox Series. Xbox fans are going to have a lot of games to play throughout the generation. Now, unfortunately, we do have some bad news regarding Final Fantasy VII Remake for the PC. And this really is just such an odd and weird situation because kind of leading up to Final Fantasy VII Remake, I mean, this has been one of the more anticipated releases for a couple years now. If you really think about it, Final Fantasy VII Remake released last year for the PlayStation 4, but we always knew that this was planned for the PC as well. In fact, before this game even officially released on the PlayStation 4, they did actually show PC footage at one point in time. So we kind of always knew that this game was eventually going to head over to PC, but because PlayStation paid for that timed exclusivity, PC fans were then going to have to wait an extra year to play Final Fantasy VII Remake, or that's what we originally believed. Since then, though, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade released, which seems to have extended that PlayStation exclusivity for a little extra time, so PC fans then had to wait even longer. Here we are, though, almost a year and a half later, and it's finally been revealed for PC. But right away, there was some controversy surrounding this game, because not only did this launch as an Epic Game Store exclusive, which is already going to rub some fans the wrong way, but then on top of that, they announced this as a $70 game. This was a little surprising because typically we don't see that on PC, but also, I mean, PC fans have already had to wait almost a year and a half to play this game, but then you're going to also make them pay $70? Yeah, that's not going to sit well with fans at all. But at the very least, with it being a $70 game, you're expecting this to be a high-quality PC port. Well, about that, it does not sound like this is a high-quality port at all. This right now is being described as one of the worst ports on PC in years. Now, this is coming directly from Digital Foundry, which, they analyze games for a living, so they do know what they're talking about, and they right now are describing this as a terrible PC port. Yeah, several members from Digital Foundry took to Twitter to kind of talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake and some of the different issues that it has. It definitely has some frame rate issues, to say the least, but Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry over on Resetter, I think his statement is probably the most telling on the situation surrounding Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is where he says, "This is literally the worst AAA release I have seen on PC in a good long time. I humbly submit that no one should buy it." Yeah, that is quite the bold statement indeed. And I mean, this is just such a disappointing situation. I mean, here we have a highly anticipated release that fans have been waiting for about a year and a half now, and now that they finally got it, it seems like Square Enix completely botched this release. Not only you're going to have to pay $70, but apparently it's just flat out terrible. I mean, what exactly happened here? And I mean, just in general, it seems like Square Enix really struggles when it comes to PC releases. It seems like quite a few of their ports over on PC does launch with these issues, whether that be with Nier Automata, we saw that with Chrono Trigger, various Final Fantasy games have launched with issues, and now here we have Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's just disappointing, and I think what makes it worse is that Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually a really good game. It's probably one of my favorite games that has released in the last couple years. I think it's phenomenal. The story's really good. The gameplay feels excellent. And I mean, what should be a really good release on PC has turned out to be atrocious. This is just not acceptable, especially for the price that they're asking for when it comes to this game. Now, of course, right now it's only available on the Epic Games Store, but hopefully when it does eventually head over to Steam, maybe they get some of this stuff fixed up. Though, I mean, when it comes to Square Enix PC games, there's always going to be a big question surrounding that. But with this being one of their biggest releases in general, I really hope that they take a good hard look at this and fix this game before it releases over on Steam. In the meantime, though, unfortunately, if you've been looking forward to this game, just kind of hold off on that PC release. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, with 2021 wrapping up, what letter grade would you give the entirety of 2021 for video games? And it does seem like, for the most part, you all were pretty happy with 2021, with 11% of you giving it an A, 57% of you gave it a B, 24% gave it a C, 5% a D, and then only 3% of you gave it an F. So it does seem like, for the most part, you all really did enjoy 2021. And I kind of agree with what KWM Mercenary had to say here. Mercenary said, "Honestly, I've heard a lot of people say it was a slow year for games this year, but I can't remember a time I wasn't playing." And I do completely agree here. I have seen various comments kind of say that they didn't really care for 2021 and it was just a slow overall year. But I think that this is kind of the way the internet just works in general, where some of that negativity might be a little louder than some of the positive remarks in general. But I do think that if you like a wide variety of games, I feel like 2021 had a lot to offer this year, and there was just a consistent amount of games releasing all year long. I mean, we had games like Returnal, there was Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, It Takes Two, you had Resident Evil Village, there was Forza Horizon 5, Halo Infinite, Psychonauts 2, Metroid Dread, there was Lost Judgment, Tales of Arise, you had Shin Megami Tensei 5, there was a new Mario Party this year, you had several Pokemon games and Deathloop, and I mean, the list just kind of goes on and on. I mean, of course, not all of these are big blockbuster games, I mean, other than games like Halo as an example, but in general, I mean, there was a lot of really high quality games this year, and I think my favorite part of 2021 is just the return of some beloved franchises that maybe hasn't gotten the recognition that it deserved in the past. I mean, we saw Ratchet & Clank return with Rift Apart, Metroid Dread, Psychonauts 2, and all three of these games were legitimate Game of the Year candidates. We saw Pokemon Snap return this year with new Pokemon Snap. There was Neo The World Ends With You, and it was just so cool to see all of these games released this year. And for the most part, they turned out to be really high-quality games. So that's kind of the thing that really stood out to me this year, is just seeing all these franchises just get so much love and attention. And yeah, I just love seeing so many of these games come back, especially Psychonauts and Metroid Dread. But yeah, I thought that 2021 was a fantastic year for gaming. Here's to hoping 2022 will be just as good though, if not even better. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.